Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining us for today's video. The topic for today is politics and therapy. Now, anecdotally, I've seen many practitioners voice their concerns about politics and therapy, noting that the political beliefs of the practitioner should never enter the therapy space. This video today is going to review why this idea is outdated, along with some practical considerations for clients and practitioners to discuss politics in session. Now, before talking about politics and therapy, let's make sure we're on the same page before we discuss what that means. When we discuss politics on a macro level, we're talking about the art and science of governing, policy, crafting, and our approach to both domestic and international issues. How that looks like on a day-to-day basis may seem boring to some and not register entirely to others. Whether these events do catch your attention will likely be based on either how much you're impacted directly or indirectly by them. For example, a legislator may decide that in order to balance their budget, statewide mental health services accessed through Medicaid insurances, or Medi-Cal if you're based in California, will see a 25% reduction in funding. That alone doesn't raise alarms and won't until we see the effects trickle down from macro to meso to micro impacts. To continue with this example, consider this. Due to this 25% reduction in mental health services funding, counties renegotiate their contracts with community mental health agencies. As part of these renegotiations, the providers at these mental health agencies now have higher billing quotas to take in the same cash flow as the year prior without raises, additional bonuses, or compensation that reflects the increased workload. Outside of associates that need to accrue their licensure hours at these agencies, providers who are licensed and therefore possess increased job mobility as a result of their licensure are more likely to consider leaving their positions. When these providers leave, the quality and continuity of care can take a massive hit, which can negatively impact the populations that these providers were serving to begin with. So as we trail through that example, I want us to now consider who has been impacted by this legislation. If this agency was an agency that serves substance-addicted populations, then we can see the negative impacts there. If this agency served low-income residents, then we'll also see some negative impacts of this legislation in this population as well. The same goes for any marginalized communities who were accessing services to begin with through this or other agencies impacted by the cuts. So when it comes down to politics and therapy, suggesting that the providers who both work in and outside of this agency are going to be impartial to these policies that impact them and their clients is akin to suggesting that these providers feel apathetic to the harm that is caused by them and are willing to be complacent in that harm. Now, we started this discussion through the lens of broad policy changes in politics, but we're not shying away from some of the more hot-button topics that have come up and how they can play out in the therapy room. To start here, we're going to cover some facets of identity that are often targeted in policymaking or the way that we're treated. These facets are gender, race, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, attractiveness, ability, immigration status, size, religion, family, etc., to name a few. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but largely to be used for demonstration purposes. So let's start with sexual orientation. Jason, a heterosexual therapist, believes that gay marriage should not be legal. Jason also believes that same-sex attraction is an impulse that can and should be modulated through practices such as conversion therapy. Side note, conversion therapy is not endorsed by the APA, and according to a study published by Meanley in 2020, the practice of it has been found to be ineffective and mentally harmful to gay-identified individuals. Despite this, Jason strives to be impartial to his clients who do identify as gay. Enter Peter. Peter is a gay man in his mid-30s who has been experiencing anxious and depressive episodes related to recent adverse experiences in dating. Peter sets out to collaborate with Jason about his treatment plan goals, but finds himself having a difficult time doing so. Peter believes that he needs to work on becoming more self-confident and finding ways to cope with his intrusive thoughts, while Jason believes that Peter would be better off if he just understood the root of why he experiences same-sex attraction in the first place. And herein lies the problem. As long as Jason believes that Peter's same-sex attractions are pathological in nature, Peter is, at the very least, going to feel stuck due to Jason's subconscious desire to see Peter as a straight man emerge in therapy. The two are likely never going to see eye to eye as long as Jason's idea of what can help remains in stark opposition to who Peter fundamentally is. So the idea that Peter and Jason can successfully work together without broaching the fact that Peter's identity has been politicized and Jason has taken an approach in his personal and professional life in opposition to it begins to feel more like a myth, as Jason's beliefs, whether they're stated or not, are going to shape his conceptualization of Peter's issues and how they're best treated. This is just one example of many that I can give you, and believe me, there are many. But the point of making this video is not to suggest that your therapist needs to align with your beliefs 100% of the time. Instead, I would suggest that both provider and client examine their political beliefs and try to determine which of those beliefs are important enough to determine whether or not they can see a path forward in working with their provider. Now, if this seems like a bit of an extreme ask, consider this. An article published by DeAngelis in 2019 in association with the American Psychological Association purported that better relationships with clients lead to better outcomes in therapy. If the relationship between provider and client is built on a foundation of mutual trust, care, and respect, then we can make some easy inferences about the relationship and how well aligned clients and providers are. In simpler terms, we want providers who are willing to see and hear our stories as we've experienced them, as opposed to through the lens of whatever ideas they've been fed about our identities or political beliefs. I will speak for myself here when I tell my clients that I personally don't identify as an ally to any community, because I don't believe that allyship is a static trait, nor one that should be designated by someone in a position of relative power to the communities that they may be working with. If a client wants to discuss how I feel about the politicization of their identities or how I would imagine supporting them in their treatment plan goals, then that conversation can happen either in the consultation prior to starting services or in the first session to see if we're a good fit. I hope this video has been helpful for both therapists and those seeking out therapy. If you've liked today's video, please consider liking and subscribing, as doing so enables us to bring you more therapy content. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.